Hi, everybody. I'm Say. I'm a part-timer at Crestwood, and I'm an artist. I make whatever art I want in whatever medium. It doesn't matter. I do not care. And so today, today we're going to be using watercolor as our medium of creating art, which is really exciting for me. Along with colored pencil, I think I'm probably the most proficient in watercolor as well as colored pencil in terms of like traditional art. I just have the most experience in it. I just have the most experience with watercolor as opposed to like I've never used oil paint before in my life, for example, or oil pastels, but I do use watercolor a lot. And I had somebody come into the library yesterday, asked me about this class and requested that I show some of my personal watercolor pieces that I've done. So I have many spanning about, goodness, I mean, I could probably find some watercolors that I did as a kid, but I don't know if that's relevant. But certainly like seriously spanning, I want to say 7 years or so. I started doing watercolor my freshman year of high school, all the way back in 2015. And I am now a senior in college at FIT, which is where I am zooming in from right now. I'm at school today. And I'm just going to show you some pieces that I did last year for one of my classes last semester. We were tasked to, it was a history class, and we were tasked to just sketch different furniture pieces or areas or buildings or structures that we found interesting during each lecture. And because I'm Say and I do things my way, I decided to watercolor them instead. So I have them all, and I guess I'll show you them in chronological order here. I'll just like switch my camera view really quickly. So this was the first one I did. This is of this museum isn't open anymore, but it's of the American Museum of Art or the Whitney Museum, something like that. Yeah, and this was like the very first piece I did. So you can see it's not just watercolor. I used colored pencil for some of the shading and line art and things like that, and like the trees. And if you look really close, I used a gel pen for the chairs because they were white. So this was like the super first piece I did last year, as well as this chair, which is the diamond chair, right? Very iconic chair. And this is one of my favorite pieces still that I did. And like the third piece, I did three, so we had to do a few each week. It's a shame I don't remember what any of these buildings are, so I guess I kind of like didn't do the point of the history class, but whatever. I just want to show you guys the progression of my skill over the course of 4 months of doing watercolor every week. To show that you guys can improve very rapidly too if you put in the effort. So yeah, these were like the three first ones I did the first week, and they're fine, they're good, they're nice, whatever. And then I don't remember what the second week was, but early on I did this piece. I had found some old watercolor paper that my mom used to use when she went to FIT way back in the 90s. And I used it, and I really don't like it. It warped a lot, as you can see, like the paper edge is all wobbly. It kind of looks like tissue paper, and I didn't like the way my color was applying. So I redid it on my own Canson watercolor paper, which is what you guys should be using over at Crestwood. It's what we're going to be using today here on camera. And this one was a lot of fun because of all the little dots for the leaves and the trees, and like doing this like all the shadows and light parts and stuff. So that was like, I'm pretty sure that was the second week that I did. And this was another one that I did early on as well. And I don't know if you can notice, but this has the addition of line art that I did with lining pens, particularly this brand. They're called Microns. They're a Japanese line art pen. But you can also use a Sharpie pen. I have a Sharpie pen right here as well. But I definitely use these, and these come in all different sizes. They're really fun, and they help define edges and things, especially because like this is a painting of architecture, so there's like a lot of straight edges or whatever. At some point, I did this hallway that is in a hospital, not hospital, hotel in Japan. And I kind of struggled a lot with this one, but the main thing that I was trying to get at was like how to paint the depiction of light. So you can see right here, like this is a little light box that's reflecting light onto the floor, and these wall sconces are reflecting light onto the ceiling. So I don't know if I was super successful at making it clear that this is light, but you don't know until you try. One of my favorite pieces as like a progression of that is this, which is a museum in Italy somewhere made by some guy who basically, instead of putting windows in the middle of the wall, put windows in the top corners of the wall, because corners are usually dark, like in this painting. And I think I did a much better job of like depicting that this is light and like this is dark. So yeah, and sort of same thing like with this is an opera house in Germany, and like this is a glass wall, and like all these little color dots are glass that light comes through. This was another earlier one that I did that I was like sort of struggling with, but like I said, you don't get better until you try. So like this I did before this one. And maybe it's also like the simplicity of this one, but I think this one is really successful. This is a later one that I did, which is of another, I don't remember what country in Europe. I think it's also Italy, but I'm not sure. This one wasn't really so much about light as it was about color and like super detail, like all the tiles on the floor right there, blah, blah, blah. My last, like the last one that I finished, well, this is actually the last one that I finished. I was like struggling a bit with it, but the one I finished before that was really, really fun. We had a class on pop art and its impact on architecture. So I did 3 pop art things, right? This is an Andy Warhol, famous, like Marilyn Monroe. I forgot the artist who did this, but this is also like the super famous Randy's Donuts out in California. And this was probably the most fun I've ever had doing watercolor. And I love doing watercolor with line art, but that's for another class. Today, because it is the beautiful month of April and we live on a planet called Earth, we're going to be painting this illustration. It's kind of abstract. It's kind of fun, right? We got 2 hands holding the bottom of the earth, and at the top is like a little sprout growing with a heart, and there's like a rainbow behind. So the original piece that I did is actually at Crestwood. It should be, you guys should be able to see it from the table right now, like if you look across. I think it's part of the Earth Day display. And this is what we're going to be doing today, and this is super exciting and super fun. Really, I hope really easy to understand. I hope super easy and fun and cool, right? And for this, you can use either one of these 2 palettes. I think I used this one, so I'm going to use this one. But if anyone wants me to use this, oh, this one also has a brush in it. I didn't even notice that. Wow, I'll leave that. This is completely untouched. This is, if anyone wants me to use this other palette, that's totally fine. Please request in the chat, or like just unmute yourself and speak out loud and say, hey, say, can you use the Prang watercolor palette. You can also, I mean, you can get watercolors for any price point. I got this 35 color set on Amazon for $15, and this is what I used to make all the previous pieces that I just showed you. I mean, it's fine as a set, and you can see how much I've used it and everything. The pigment is fine. I just, It's fine. It's $15, like whatever. It's better than these are, certainly. Like these, especially the Crayola one, to me has like a waxy texture, almost like it's liquid crayon in a way that these sort of don't. These have a more like chalky texture to them. But they're both pretty affordable options, and watercolors can get really expensive, and I've been trying to buy an expensive set for like a year and I keep procrastinating on it, so whatever. Yeah, let's get started with this. So first, here's why we need our pencil. We're going to draw this. We're not just going to free ball. I mean, you can if you want to, but I don't. All my watercolor pieces I draw with pencil first, and I draw it very lightly. So the thing about watercolor paper is that it's sort of made to be this heavyweight paper that can withstand taking in a lot of water, almost like a paper towel, but better because it's not as grainy as a paper towel. And you don't dispose of it afterwards like you do a paper towel. Like you use a paper towel, you throw it out. We paint a picture, we keep it, right? So I really like, I've been using the Canson watercolor paper for a long time. I really like it because of how smooth the surface of the paper is, like relatively compared to other watercolor papers out there. It has a minimal warpage to me. Like I showed earlier, this other piece that I did had like so much warping, and it literally looks like I did it on a Bounty paper towel. Like you can see the dots in the grain of the paper, and like you can just see how warped it is. It's like, and it also affected how the color showed up on the paper. So like it wasn't, but this was a watercolor paper too. I don't know if, I mean, maybe the age of it had something to do with it, because this paper was from the 90s, was bought in the 90s. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. But like sometimes watercolor paper is hit or miss. You definitely, I've never seen anyone use watercolor on a canvas, on a stretched canvas before. You mainly do it on paper. Yeah, and I like, yeah, we're using Canson. I'm going to show you the pad, not the, what is it? This, the sketchbook, or like the pad, the paper pad. Again, so that you guys like see that, right? Canson watercolor, 30 pages. And that's a pretty long time. I really like it. And it's fairly affordable. It's maybe like $15 for this. So yeah, pretty good. So starting off, we got Big O Planet, which is like a circle sort of kind of. So I'm going to take my number 2 Dixon Ticonderoga pencil and just very lightly, this is super important, very lightly, listen to me, make sure you hear this, very lightly with your pencil, draw a circle. So lightly you can't even see it on camera. This is so important. So when we draw on watercolor paper, because it is so heavyweight and thick, there are only so many amounts of times you can erase the paper before you destroy it, which is why we want to draw as lightly as possible. I recommend drawing light anyway, because erasing can be very difficult if you draw super hard, but especially on watercolor paper, because erasing on watercolor paper is something you want to avoid at all costs. Like you shouldn't even have to avoid erase anything at once. And so with that, okay, what if I make a mistake? Say my hand is shaky and I can't draw a perfect circle. Well, first things first, I didn't draw a perfect circle either. My ends didn't meet, and it's kind of lumpy. The reason why we draw it so light is so that instead of erasing it, we just paint over it, because what really is going to take is like the star of the show here is the paint, right? So I just drew my circles, kind of lumpy, the lines don't meet, whatever, big deal. So at the top, we're going to draw one curved line like that, and another one like that. to make like the leaves, the stem and the leaves. So I have, and look, I made some mistakes, so I'm going, but because I drew it so lightly, I can very lightly erase that off. And I don't have to worry about it. And I caused minimal damage to the paper. You can't even tell that I erased it. So, right, we have these two lines. It kind of doesn't matter. One can be higher than the other. It's up to you. And so then starting from this line, we're gonna like go back out and sort of create a V in between each leaf. And then starting from about here, I'm going to draw the shape of the leaf. And again on the other side. And everything I draw with the pencil is super duper light, like that, right? And we're gonna draw a heart in the middle. I hope you guys know how to draw a heart. It's okay if you don't. I kind of messed it up majorly here. But again, I drew it lightly, so it's no thing. I can just erase it and cause minimal damage because I didn't draw it super, super dark, right? So boom, we got our heart. So this is like the basic setup. Now we have to draw the hands sort of like cupping the earth, right? Cupping earth. And I like to do this by, like, I just make like a lump, a curve, a loop, a hoop, not a hoop, that's not a hoop, a semicircle. And then I go on the other side. And so once I have, now that I have that general shape, I go back in and I sort of outline the general shapes of each individual finger. So starting with the thumb, I like do this hook right here. And my line is super messy and it doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't matter. And so like drawing the knuckle, now we're drawing the whatever finger that is. That would be like the ring finger. No, that would be the pointer finger. Yeah, right. And again, we're gonna do like another knuckles, like when you bend your hand, like your knuckles sort of point up. So at the bottom here, I'm like going up and then back down slightly and then around, like following the shape of the planet. And then again, for now is the ring finger, so we just did the middle finger, the ring finger, and then like the pinky. It's kind of out of the way. Maybe you don't even need to draw the knuckle for it. Right, and the same thing on the other side. So we draw the thumb. The thumb is like the most that hooks around, and then the pointer finger, the ring finger, not the ring finger, the middle finger. People have all different kinds of hands, so you know, there's no such thing as a perfect hand, especially when we're in this stage and we're just like drawing. So now we're doing the ring finger now, and then the pinky, the little baby finger. And then last, I just like to, I think nails on the finger give a lot of context. So if you ever stumped drawing hands, I implore you to just look at your own other hand right next to you. And so like I like to look at my thumb, or like I like to look at pictures of people's hands. So I really want it to be like part of the nail is obscured because we're holding something. So it's not going to be perfectly in the middle of the finger. It's going to be off to the side like that. Right, so there's like a gap here, but it comes up to the edge of the finger on the left side. And yeah, so I just kind of like to do that for all of the fingers. Some people have, everyone has different hands, so it kind of doesn't matter what shape the nails take as long as it's like proportioned with the finger. And again, because we're drawing lightly, we're gonna paint over it, like blah, blah, blah. We have our hands drawn. Wow, amazing. All 5 fingers there and accounted for. I mean, all 10 fingers there and accounted for, 5 fingers on each hand. And so now the last part of the drawing is to draw the continents. I drew the Americas because we live in America, and we are on the North American continent, which is right here. And there's also the South American continent. There's debate whether these are 2 separate continents. It doesn't matter. That's not what we're here for. We're drawing them both. And the Caribbean as well, I included, and some other islands off over yonder. So I don't know the contours of Canada by heart or by mind. So I sort of cheated and just had it like, as you can see, it just sort of like goes up into the sprout here. So it kind of like, it doesn't matter, but Canada actually has a huge coastline and many little islands breaking off further and further into the North Pole. But this is our little painting, so it kind of doesn't matter. So in the opposite direction, I'm just going to draw 2 little curves in the opposite direction from this existing sprout curve. I think I should be clear. And then just like approximate. It would help, like if it would help you can look at a map or a globe right next to you. I like to sort of eyeball it. That's the other thing about watercolor to me is that the other fun, good thing about it to me is that watercolor lends itself to be a little bit more messy. So we've come down the West Coast line here with like Alaska's here somewhere or something up there. And then down like California to Mexico, and then back up across Mexico here. And Mexico sort of goes like from west to east along this coast and going further into like Central America. So that's really like that's like the West Coast line there. Of like back out for Ecuador and Chile down here. And so we're gonna have that like, I literally, I don't have it committed to memory. So I just go in and then back out and then like slowly back in. So it meets at the pinky right down here. And so then again, starting from the right side or the east coast of Canada, we come down here. I don't know, I don't have it committed to memory and I'm not looking at a picture for reference, but we go in at some point, right? And then I want to say like at the same level as like the end of California is when we have the Florida Peninsula, which is just sort of like a digit, right? And then we have the Gulf of Mexico. And we got like Nicaragua and Guatemala over here. It's kind of a geography class also. We got Panama and Colombia, Venezuela, New Guinea. Whatever else South American countries there are. And it's not that big of a deal if it's like not exact or something, because we're going to be painting over it. So don't kill yourself over it. Don't like, I don't remember what I really don't remember what Alaska looks like, and I feel like it's such a big feature of our coastline. I think it's something like that. I don't know. Like it kind of and it like trails off. Over here, I'm drawing some like Pacific Islands off on the ridge here. Sort of to nod at Hawaii, but also like other Pacific Islands, and you can draw more. I don't know where they are. There's also like the Easter Islands down here off the coast of Ecuador. And we also have some islands off the shore of Canada and like Maine. So, right, and then like this, I was intending to be Greenland, but I don't have the shoreline committed to memory, so I'm just drawing like a blob. What I do have committed to memory though is the Caribbean, because I'm Caribbean. So we're gonna just start off with Cuba, which is like the biggest island. So we're gonna draw the Greater Antilles. Cuba is the biggest island, and it's like right off the coast of Florida, right there, boom. Then we have Hispaniola, which is home of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, which is like that. We got Puerto Rico, and then like Jamaica and some more islands along. We have like the Lesser Antilles, like Trinidad and Tobago are closer to the coast of Colombia and Venezuela. And yeah, so basically we're done drawing. Now is for the fun part. The drawing part's over. We don't need this pencil anymore. Bye-bye. I'm busting open the Crayola. And I'm going to make sure you guys get a nice, good view. And I'm going to take a large brush like this. I'm going to go into that green right there. I'm going to run my brush along the palette like a few times. I'm going to go back into the water, and I'm going to very lightly do, this is called a wash. I'm not super brushed up on my watercolor terminology, unfortunately. I'm more of a doer than a studier. It's more my nature. Like instead of studying things, I just do it, and I learn from doing. I'm very hands-on in that sense, I suppose. But basically, because we're using watercolor paper and because we're using a nice bristled brush, a nice large one, we can spread this water around very easily without the paper soaking it all the way up, like it would if this was a paper towel or like a piece of copy paper or something like that. And you can paint in the entirety of both continents this light green, which I recommend you do right now. Super, super fast. Don't worry about getting every nook and cranny or like being super precise. It doesn't really matter. And also what I like to do is if I start running out of pigment elsewhere, I like to just like take my brush, because the surface that I painted is still wet, and I like to drag some of that pigment down so I can continue using it without having to dip back into my palette, versus like, I can't really do that if I'm using acrylic paint, or obviously I can't do that if I'm using colored pencil. Like that's not even the same realm. But watercolor is really cool like that. Like you can move it wherever you want as long as it's wet. As long as there's water involved. I'm gonna fill in some of these islands here. I'm gonna fill in like Greenland or whatever. Greenland is actually pretty icy, but it's okay. We're gonna do the Caribbean. I think I'm gonna leave the like tiny little baby islands alone. I'm gonna dip back into some water to finish out South America down here. To finish up South America, rather. So the thing about painting with watercolor that you should know more than anything is that you need to work in layers. Particularly like building up layers going from light to dark, because you can always go darker, but once you put the pigment on the page, you cannot go any lighter than what you've done. So I'm taking a tiny little skinny brush and I'm going in with the green up here, and I am just making the veins of the leaves. Super light. And it's okay if I mess up because they're super light and because not everything has to be perfect. I don't know what else to say. In the original picture, I have the veins connected to the stem, so I'm going to do that here as well. Just gonna like connect them, connect these guys. And so great, while our green is drying, I'm gonna continue with this same skinny brush, and I'm gonna go in with this orange color right here. Wow, so cool. Some more water. The more water you have, the more mobility you have with the paint, but the less pigment you have. So the more water, the less pigment, but the more mobility. The less water, the more pigment, but like you can't move the paint as far. So we're just going to do this heart orange. You can make it whatever color you like. I just like it being orange because it sort of almost contrasts with the green, but not quite. It certainly contrasts with the blue that we'll get into literally right now. So I'm getting my big brush again, and I'm going into the water. And this time, you see this like green paint that I have left over. I'm gonna mix it in with the blue. Yeah, very important. That's the other thing about watercolor that I really love, is that they're really easy to mix. So that's what I'm doing. I put in like a little green and then the blue. And so now I'm gonna do the blue of the ocean. So right, we're gonna start with the Pacific. I'm just gonna paint right over those islands there because we can go over them again in another layer. We're going to trace around. Well, I'm going to fill in this area first before everything dries out. But like, yeah. And yeah, we're going to trace the fingers over here. All the way down to the bottom here, the South Pole, or what would be the South Pole, because like this depiction is if North America is in summertime, because we're pointed towards like if we're the sun, if we're like looking at it from the perspective of the sun. Yeah, we're like in summertime in this depiction because the South American continent or landmass is obscured. Also obscured by the hand that's holding it, but you know, obscured nonetheless. So that's the Pacific Ocean, painted in super light, and we're going to go in starting with the Gulf of Mexico here. I also chose the Americas because I'm more familiar with our geography than the geography of Eurasia and Africa. I certainly would need to sit there and painstakingly like look as I draw, and we don't have time for that. So, but honestly, if you don't even care, like you can just draw any or paint any green land masses you want. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be like super photorealistic accurate. I thought it would be nice to put this in a more real context because of its message. It looks nicer when it dries. Yes. Yes, it looks nicer and it looks lighter when it dries too. That's the other thing. So, yeah, that's the other thing too. That's why you want to work in layers as well, because when you apply it wet, the color is so, it's the pigment is basically activated. So the pigment is showing through a lot, but once it dries, it's like it kind of calms down a bit and sort of oxidize is not the word, but dries definitely. All right, and so the last part that we need to do our layers on are these two hands. And as you can see, I have them done in two different skin colors. I have done a previous lesson with the library and NNORC, explaining how to color different skin tones with colored pencil. I believe that class is not available on our YouTube page yet, but hopefully it will be soon. This is sort of a different beast though, because we're only operating with these 8 colors instead of like these 35. So these 35 for the light color, I could very easily just like choose this one and this one. But we only have brown and black here. And they're both pretty pigmented. So what do we do? Oh my gosh. Again, we work in layers. Oh my gosh. Who could have guessed? Me. Well, I knew it wasn't a guess. So I'm going into the brown here at the bottom, and you can see it's a very nice like chestnut color. And I'm just going to like fill in. This is going to be the darker hand, so this is super easy to do. Like the right hand is the darker complexion hand, so I'm just going to do a light wash of the brown straight off the palette, and then we can like continue working on that a bit later. And honestly, like you can fill in the fingernails as well, because those are going to like this is pretty much the final color of the fingernails, the way it is right now. So, but everything else we're going to keep going back in and like darkening. But say, what about this hand? There's no peach color in my palette. What do I do? What do I do? So we're going to take the brown, we're going to go all the way up here, and we're going to place it on our plastic tray. That's the other good thing. I don't know any watercolor set that doesn't come with a plastic tray that you can flip open and use as like a impromptu paint mixer. Literally like this one, this is the Crayola one. This Prang one also has it like right here, and my $15 Amazon one with 35 colors also has it. The only thing, like, I guess if you were to buy watercolor individually, you would have to struggle with that. But with these, if you buy it in a set, you don't have to. So, so I have my brown up here ready to be mixed. What am I going to mix it with? Good question. I'm going to go in with some orange and some yellow. Yellow is the lightest color in the color on the color wheel in terms of like pigment. And so I'm just going to do like a bunch of mixing and a lot of water, a lot of water. A lot of water is how we get this to be super light. So now, as you can see, I swipe my brush across and wow, look at that. We made our own impromptu like peach lighter tone skin color very, very quickly with just 3 of the colors. And wow, my gosh, it's already time to do layer number 2. So I don't know if you noticed, but not every part of the land that we live on is green forest, especially like here where the Rocky Mountains are, the Great Plains, and I don't know what mountain range this is, but along Chile, along the Pacific coastline. In South America, it also gets pretty rocky. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is basically mark out all those areas with yellow. And I'm going to use a little brush for that. And I'm just going to use straight yellow. So I'm going to go in, right? I'm going in with yellow. I'm moving that to the side so you guys can see. I'm going in with yellow here. It's okay if it's like super pigmented because it's going to be super pigmented in the end anyway. So I like to how do you say, like stipple. And even better is if you like, you could even start off with a light yellow instead of a light green as like your paint base as well. Like you don't have to do it green. So yeah, it sort of like spreads out. The Great Plains actually extends up into Canada, I believe. They call it something else though up there. So yeah, we got all that. Look at all that yellow. Wow, very cool. Very awesome. Maybe some like yellow over here. And then some yellow like right like down here along the Pacific coastline. Because there's different biomes and things, so you know. Right, awesome, great. Great. So while that dries, right, we're gonna work on another part. We're gonna work on the darker greens. So again, I'm taking this and I'm going into this green like straight up. I think maybe I'll mix it a little bit with this yellow, but they'll mix on the paper too if you put it next to each other like this and sort of like clean your brush with water and then just like go back in with just water on the brush. Like they'll mix like while they're both still wet. And even if the yellow is a little dry, like the water will reactivate it, or it should reactivate it. So yeah, but I'm gonna go in with this darker green because like the south down here in Florida and the Caribbean is pretty forested. Either marshy or temperate or whatever, but pretty greenly forested. So I like to stipple because it adds a different sort of texture than like the way you apply your brush to the paper, I should say, shows up in the way the paint sits. Like it affects the way the paint sits. So if I stipple, it makes it look more natural than if I were to do like sweeping brush strokes or something. But you can do that too. I just say whatever style you choose to do, you should keep it consistent. That's all. That's my only right. So like the east coast of the US is pretty, the US and Canada is pretty green. Most of Canada, most of the people that live in Canada experience all 4 seasons. So, you know, it's not like I need to do it white. And of course, also because it's an abstract thing, we're branching it up into this little sprout. So this is where I'm doing my paintbrush strokes right here. Because now it's like growing up into the sprout. So this is layer number 2 for the sprout. And I'm only going to bring the green over here. I'm not going to apply it to the veins. And I just realized we only have 10 minutes left. But I got this. You guys are going to be blown away. I don't know if you guys can do it in 10 minutes, but I surely can. That I can promise. And right, so we just add some water so that it mixes, blah, blah, blah. Same thing, like now in Central America is when the Amazon rainforest starts to really pop up. So we're gonna go in like super duper green here in like Nicaragua and Belize. Those are the countries that are on this coast right here. And yeah, and like Colombia, Brazil, Venezuela, Guyana, New Guinea are all here and accounted for in what we are depicting as the Amazon rainforest. And I'm just stippling, so it's super dark, irregular. I'm mumbling because I'm like trying to focus. And again, we're going to go over the entirety of the Caribbean because these are all pretty nice green and forested because these are tropical islands. So, right, we got Cuba, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, the Lesser Antilles, Trinidad, Tobago over here, somewhere, whatever. Got these little islands. I'm gonna do the Easter Islands down here. And yeah, so there's that, right? We have that done. And then I think like lastly for the landmass would be just to go in with like orange and brown to sort of make like the Rocky Mountains and like the desert, the North American desert and things like that. So it's like over the SoCal desert that extends into New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Colorado. And same thing down here, I believe also has like some more arid, dry climates here in South America. So that's what we're doing. And like the paint is mixing and it's like getting really messy because it's watercolor. So that's pretty much the landmass done. I want to really draw your attention to the ocean. So we're going to do a second layer, but this time, instead of going all the way, right, I'm going to go in with more blue, like a deeper blue here. And I'm going to stop like just around every little island. I'm going to like make a little circle around every little island and landmass. So we'll go up to the fingers, but we won't go up to like say Alaska here, for example, and the Pacific coast of North and South America. Like we will sort of avoid those. And the reason why is to depict the depth difference from the shoreline versus like the deep open ocean. And of course, there are some parts of the ocean that are deeper than others. I don't know which parts they are. I have no idea where the Mariana Trench is. I'm going to be honest with you. So I don't, I can't direct you to that. But if you know where they are, you know how to place them, like that would be even cooler to do like a third layer with a darker. But you see how much darker this blue is than the initial layer that we put down, right? Because it just has so much more pigment. Like that. Boom. And I'm going to do that right there. So that's the Pacific Ocean, and we're going to do the Atlantic Ocean here right now. Very fast. So you don't even need to really thread the needle per se. Like, so here we are at the Caribbean, right? So you're like, oh, I need to do like deep in between each island. No, you don't. Because pretty much most of the water around the Caribbean is shallow. Relatively to the rest of the ocean. So yeah, you don't need to do all that. You can just sort of like I'll park it or like loop them all in one thing in one go. This is actually crazy. Like the first layer I did was so light and this second layer is so dark that I almost need, it might even be better to do like a transitional layer. I think I did a third layer. I actually did. I did a third layer in the original where I added like some more green and stuff back into the water. But we are pressed for time. I don't know if you guys need any instruction on this rainbow here besides the fact that, well, I'll explain it to you this way. So I take this big brush again, I'm using the same brush, I just clean it off in my water. And without any color on it, I go and I just like mark out a big square, and I even dropped a piece of water, a heavy piece of water there.
Say, Angela asked a question. She wants to know if you ever pat it dry.
If you feel like you have too much water, you can. I normally don't. But that is certainly something you can do if you're like, I have too much water, I don't know how to control this. If it's like spreading everywhere, then yeah, absolutely, you can pat it dry. And it will also pick up the pigment. So it won't just pick up the water, it'll pick up the pigment because the water is pigmented now. So if you lose some pigment that you didn't want to, you will have to reapply it, but hey, you know, that's sort of the only way you can like quote unquote erase in watercolor. So I have this big water blob down here amassed out. It's just clear water, or as clear as it can be. And so now I'm going to go in with a super wet brush into this pink, and I'm going to just, and so now, like, because I put the water down first, the color can spread even faster and even lighter, or not, you know, or it can be like really pigmented. I'm going for more pigmented, like one go sort of thing. Like that, and then just like move the water around with the brush. And you basically just want to repeat that all the way up the painting, and just how do I say, like, you see how I left white space around the fingers here at the bottom? Like, you just want to do that. Like, you don't want to go, I mean, you can if you want to, you can go all the way up to the edge of each paint. I recommend not, because you run the risk of like mixing colors together that you don't necessarily want to. Right? And so actually, that was a great question that Angela asked, because right here on these fingers, I have a lot of water that I don't want there, because I'm about to, so I just tore off a piece of my tissue paper and I just like dabbed it a little bit, very lightly. I'm going to go back in and do the second layer of skin color for this finger. That's what worries me, like mixing the colors. Yeah. So if you're worried about that, always keep like a spare paper towel on hand to dab away anything that you don't want mixing together, you know? So yeah, I'm going in with the straight brown now. And kind of precise, I guess. And I'm going around the fingers. Not the fingers, the nails. Geez, whoopsie. And so I don't know how to do this in only 2 layers. I did it in like 3 or 4. And even then, like my original piece was kind of messy. So bear with me. So this is like layer number 2 here. And then we'll do layer number 2 for the other hand, and then I can go back and do layer number 3 for this hand. I think the other hand was like probably can get away with only 1 layer, 1 extra layer. I don't know about this hand though, because I want there to be depth in it, more depth than there is. So I'm going to take like a smaller brush for this hand here. And I have this like big droplet of water that just does not need to be there. So I'm going to soak it up. And I'm going to go back into that original color that I did. And I'm going to like add the shadow like around the bend of the fingers. Right? So like at the knuckles and everything, like wherever we would have a shadow cast. And I'm using a thinner brush here because I want more control over that because this is more of a detailed part of the fingers than like the general color. So, you know, yeah. And you can make it sort of like cell shaded like that, like it's super pronounced the way the shadows are located. And then like even better is if you like take some dark brown and like lightly outline the edges of the fingers. And because everything is still wet, it's like not super, it's not a straight line. It's like more painterly. And messy, so you know. And so now that we did that and like the darker skin tone is more dry, I'm going to do something a little wild and go into purple to do the shadow. Because like I said, if you remember what I said earlier about how yellow is the lightest color on the color wheel, purple is the opposite of oh, that's blue. That's straight up blue. Purple is the opposite of yellow, which also means that it is the darkest color. And so again, I think I might actually need to do that that dabbling, that paint, that paper towel dabble, right? Because I got a little dark in some spots, and I keep dipping into the blue when I mean to dip into the purple. So you know, like the bend of the thumb here is like a shadow, so whatever, like. Yeah, and I'm going to take my little piece again and like dab it super lightly. And sort of like go back and fix the edges a little bit, fix the edges, you know. And it's messy and cute and fun. And those are the two hands. I have no time, but yeah, so we're not quite there yet, but I hope it's clear. And like the same technique that we use to go around the consonants here is the same technique I used to do the green on the leaves here. So I just went around the veins of it to keep the veins light, but to keep going with like the green. So yeah,